open up the regular planning commission meeting of October 26, 2023, and if we would all stand, please. Oh, wait a minute, excuse me. We didn't call order, which I did. I'll stand for the flag. Okay, I'm back on track. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think I know. He must be Susan, if you'd note the roll, we have a full.
Noted, there's quorum.
Full attendance here tonight. I need approval of the agenda, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve tonight's agenda dated October 26, 2023.
Or I have a motion by Mr. Knowles, and I think support came committed. They knew down there, Mr. Hunwick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Seeing none, good. I don't think there's any conflicts of interest for what we're doing here tonight, because we're talking about the discussion of unfinished business of the master plan. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes. If I could have a motion for that, of the meeting of 10/12/23.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes dated 10/12/2023.
Support. I have a motion by Mr. Knowles, supported by Mr. Hunwick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Seeing none, we moved on that. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak this evening that are an item that's not on tonight's agenda? There is a gentleman. Okay, sir.
Go for it.
Try to keep it short and sweet if you can, please.
I'll make it short and sweet. Good evening. Thank you for giving me a few minutes. My name is Paul Zelch. I live at 301 Willow Lake Drive in, obviously, Oxford here, right off the lake. And I just want to briefly share with you, with the commission, my concerns, and I can probably speak, I think we have a few others here tonight as well, about the proposed development that's expected to be looked at by the boards to go in off of, I think it's 402 North Oxford Road. This project raises significant concerns about its negative impact on the community, on the natural resources, on the environment in general. We have deer and eagle and other things that are there, the rain runoff, the sewage, etc., pollution, etc., that could happen if this development takes place, the scale of the development and what it will impact on us as a community. In light of these concerns, all I'm hoping for is that this board and whoever else is responsible for the decision ultimately takes a good, strong look at all the details and all the facts involved and makes a decision that makes sense for all included, but to take a good look at the impact that it could have on our community in itself, as there are a lot of people there that love the area, love the community, want to keep it useful and family-oriented, and we just look forward to the opportunity to voice our thoughts and concerns to you and the other boards that will make the decision in the long run. So I want to thank you for your brief time tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the audience at this time? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Thank you, Board. My name is JT Schutz. I live all home from Willow Lake. Man, I love Oxford. I love living here. So I appreciate what all of you do each week. And, you know, while I second his opinion, I'm speaking on a different agenda. So I've been to a couple meetings regarding the master plan, and we've talked several weeks about the community engagement steering committee, and I was just wondering how the individuals on the steering committee were selected. That's my only question tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? All right, seeing none, do you have any commission? Oh, I apologize.
No, I'm sorry.
Short
So I'm
hand.
Christina, also from Willow Lake. But one of the other concerns that the previous gentleman, and thank you for allowing us to speak this evening, had brought up is that's just a little 2-lane road that goes through there. There's just a small intersection at the high school and all the traffic and the impact from that. So a new 350 apartment complex building would, just not even understanding what that impact would have on that roadway and stuff right there and the Pollyant Trail, because it's already just kind of a really a mess when the kids get out of school and stuff. It's very, very busy. But so just concerned for the safety of the subdivision if they would start cutting through there, because sometimes it already is used as a cut through. But thank you.
Guess I better look ahead now, see if anyone else wants to speak. Okay, I'm seeing none, so at this time I would want to know if any commissioners have comments that they'd like to put forward. Oh boy. Well, seeing none there, we're gonna move into, we don't have any public hearings this evening. We're gonna move right into unfinished business, which is discussion of the master plan, and I think we have a young lady here to do that with us.
So, and a young man.
Oh, thanks.
It hurts, Tom.
Oh, that was the meeting.
So, I'm Megan Massiminock. I'm one of the planning consultants for the township. We're, as it's already been noted, you began a master plan process. The master plan steering committee met for the first time last Tuesday night. Those individuals were selected by a group working together of township staff, appointed officials. I believe, Mr. Berger, you were part of that process, as well as the supervisor. And I want to stress, so that we don't have any misunderstandings, that the steering committee is in charge of community engagement. So, and making sure that we're asking the appropriate questions, we're getting it out as widely as possible, and making sure that there's many invitations and opportunities to participate. They are not there to directly influence or write the master plan. That is your job as the Planning Commission, and that's gifted to you by state law in the Michigan Planning and Enabling Act. But tonight, we had sent you a memo and a 360 report, and we wanted to hit the highlights of those, and also, if you read through the whole memo, you know that we had some questions for you on how the product should be, how the final master plan should be structured based on what's going on, what you have currently in the master plan, and then also asked me to reflect on the data that was in that report. And so I'm going to do the first half, and Mateo will do the second half of the report. I'm going to ask you to maybe hold questions on the report to the end of that. I saw some of you coming in had notes with page numbers on them, and be happy to talk about those. But if we could just have questions then, and then we'll present again on structure and format, and then have questions. Can everybody agree to that format?
Keeps it moving along.
All right, so, the good news is, according to the metrics that were in that Cobalt report, and Cobalt Community, we worked with them, I think, since 2017, and they looked at, they pulled data from a bunch of different sources, but when you look at those quality of life indexes, the great thing is that Oxford Township is doing really well. Your public schools in the community has 7.3 out of 10. 10 is the highest score. You know, your cost of living is a little bit higher than the national average, but not that much. Crime is lower. Violent crime, property crime, these are not big issues. The climate index is good. Air quality is good. Watershed quality, higher is better, so the national is 55, 27 is what you're scoring, so that's something maybe that we should have a little more emphasis on. But then overall, if you look at your recreation thing and your schools, this is an attractive community, this is a great place to be. And so to the outside data folks looking in, this Oxford Township is doing really well. Another thing that the report talked about was new and long-term residents. I want to highlight a couple of things because it's important to know what your long-term residents are and who they are, but with your new residents, who are they and they're entering into your community. And there's a couple of things here, if you look at these slides. Gray is longtime residents, green are the new residents. And then, so the one on the left is net new resident by income. And you'll see as you, it's a lower income, you got kind of a peak in the lower and then there's a valley and then it peaks around 100,000. And so, but that pattern's a little different than what the gray is. And your long-term residents actually are more concentrated in that 100,000 to 150,000 per year category. And then and just to note that your median age is 39 years and your median household income is around $103,392 according to SEMCOG in 2021. So so the folks coming in are making a little less than the folks who have been here for a while. And also the folks coming in, they're a little younger. They tend to be more on the younger side, as you can see by the graph.
Mr. Chair, might I make a suggestion? Or can we be allowed to ask a few questions for clarity as we go through this?
Oh, yeah.
I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be?
Yep.
Yeah. When you go back to the first one, quality of life, who comes up with these numbers and how are they generated? Is that by the Cobalt Community Research,
Mm-hmm.
the 501c3?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's their score?
Are you talking about the high school stuff or any of it?
Any of it? Just-
Oh, yeah, okay, any of the numbers.
So where does this company, this 501c3, rank in their work in the country? So we're using Cobalt. What is Cobalt? Is Cobalt nationally known? Is Cobalt the standard? Is Cobalt like Kleenex? Is it like Coca-Cola? Or where's Cobalt?
Okay. So they're nationally known. They are based out of Lansing. They started off as a nonprofit that primarily provided data to the Michigan legislature. And then over time began providing data to municipalities. And so these are drawn from a variety of different places. And if you have specific questions on each one where the data came from, we can get that information.
I just
for
want
you.
clarity on who and what Cobalt was all about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they also do statistically valid surveys.
Okay.
And that's another thing that they do, and they have some other reports that are available. A lot of things also will ping off of cell phone data now that's proprietarily available, so you have to purchase it.
Thank you.
Go to, I think it's the next slide or the next slide. That is down. It has to do with the dollar amounts.
Hmm?
And there's a couple slides in the future, so I thought I'd ask you now. Do those dollar amounts associate to today's dollars? The dollars at the time that year range? Is there something we get into housing or some things that happen? Do they include inflation? And when they go to the out years, are they calculating, or is it only in today's dollars?
I don't know that, but I would suspect it's only in today's dollars, but I'll ask that question. But they're statisticians, so
Yeah,
yeah. That's a good question.
Is it just for clarity on
yeah, I'm just wondering.
where we
Because
stand?
sometimes it could skew the data a little bit,
Yeah.
because you're not taking into account inflation across the years and
Right.
timing. So somebody that made 80,000 10 years ago is valued at over 100 today. Right?
Yeah.
So how do you compare that data over time if you don't have the numbers consistently?
And that's why I pulled, so this data is proprietary, that it has built the graphs, and that's the reason I use the median age and median household from the most up-to-date census that I knew of, or American Community Survey.
Okay.
So, but you really do, you're correct, it's an apples to apples comparison.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For age-wise, so if you're saying the median age right now is 39, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the highest age brackets coming up is 18 to 24, 25 to 29. Would that make an assumption that those are the children of the median people that are 39? So basically, a lot of young families is it's kind of, the data is kind of saying.
No, the way I would look at that is that it's younger people who are moving in, and then, not necessarily that somebody aged into 18, and is still living at home with their parents, but that's a clarification we can ask. And then if you looked at we haven't really highlighted this in this PowerPoint, but if you looked at the mosaics, so there are different household types that are kind of quote-unquote branded. You had basically seniors moving in, then you had some folks, I think 40 to 60 who were moving in, and then you had people who were in their 20s and 30s.
The way I looked at it,
cohorts.
you got, like, when you're talking from 18 to 24, and then you move over about 4 or 5 more lines in the graph, those 4 to 5 sections, all the way up to about almost 40 to 44 to 49, they're pretty consistent on a lot of new movers coming in. Then it slows down and shows you on the graph the people that are after 49, the 50s and up to the 69s. There's that graph change, and then you can go even one step further after that. I kind of put them in like thirds up there because that was the way I looked at mine at home when I looked at this graph. So that gave me the idea, okay, I don't just have 18 and 24s, I got the 35s and 39s and the 30s and 34s and all that in there. So I thought it was pretty consistent, the way the graph kind of shows you what I believe is really moving into the community. And how I looked at this and what I thought about it. So I don't know if I'm right or not, but that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, and the reason we picked these to show is that it seemed like they're painting a contrast between existing residents and incoming residents.
Right.
In terms of age and income. And that would affect what type of housing folks are looking for. And what is also interesting, kind of from more of a perspective, is a lot of communities that we're looking at, they actually have a lot more on the older side. And so this median age might be in the 40s, rather than in the 30s. And so you have a really good, strong family forming area. And that's probably due a lot to your schools and the attractiveness of living here for young families or forming families. Okay, Mr. Hunwick, then Mr. Spitz.
Oh, when I looked at that information, my assumption was they were just referring to head of households. They're not counting children or anything else in that, that's just head of households.
My question kind of goes along with that. Where did they pull the data? Did census data, or did they just statistical analysis over the last 4 or 5 censuses? How were they getting to that?
So the way that, so you don't have the 2020 census hasn't been broken down for this at this point in time. And so what they'll do is take the American Community Survey, they'll also take other data that's, they'll take data from real estate data and things like that and look at it. But I can definitely get you the methodology behind them.
But, I mean, some of that, some of it just off the top of it doesn't make sense.
Okay, what doesn't make sense?
The number of 18 to 24s moving into the area when you get the households, they can't afford $400,000 house.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Wow.
Mr. Miller's point, but.
Mom, Dad could keep them alone.
I would assume they have that some days, but not in that cases.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, I don't think it just means housing, for housing.
That's a general comment.
Okay, because there's apartments and there's manufactured homes and all these other components that this deals with. So this,
Right. But no, it is important that you share with us what doesn't ring true and what does ring true. and that was part of the reason of bringing these here tonight.
Okay,
If you're Prince Valley, there are different levels of housing.
Yeah.
If you go back to some of the other ones,
Well,
there's not enough.
they're
Oh,
including
housing
renting and
in the area,
everything,
there's not.
they're including it
Mhm.
all.
But you don't have enough of that either when you get to that. It's real low.
I lived there for a while.
I stopped looking because I gave you a question. But go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay, all right. New and long-term residents. So by marital status, you know, seems to be about this, that you have more singles coming in, and also there's an unknown factor. And then if you look at the new residents by change of people in the home, so that existing residents having almost consistently 4 people per household on median, especially in this day and age, that is a really high number of people per household. Since the 1990s, that number of people from household, it used to be nationally like this, and then it's been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because the baby boomers have been aging and their households have been getting smaller and dragged that down. But then you have new households coming in that are closer to what that average is 2.73. So maybe a single, but more likely 2 people or two people and a child. Yes.
What do they consider new
So I think
residents?
moved within the last 5 years.
I'm just curious how much of that might be skewed, because with a lot of these developments, people are moving from one side of Oxford to the other side of Oxford. Are they now a new resident?
Okay.
So you screwed up the year.
All right, these are all great questions, thank you. So, after looking at this demographic data about people and households, one of the questions we ask in a master plan is, does your housing match the market?
No.
So, let's look at this. So this is your overall housing market. And, you know, it's from, if you're a homeowner and you're looking to sell, this looks pretty good. Or if you're looking at your investment in your home, because you've got your average house sales price of almost $429,450. The length of times of houses on the market is almost a month, whereas the home value is significantly less. It's almost $300,000. And so if you look at specifically the house appreciation over the last 10 years, that's 110.3%. So you've had your housing market, and there's a little bit of a trend of this nationally because we're in a housing shortage. But this is pretty significant, is that you've got a very strong housing market with, you know, and your residential vacancy is low, it's only 3%. And so this is at the city or zip code level, so this would probably include the village as well in those.
Based on zip code, that's what we're doing. It says it's at your zip code level, so is it 48371 only or 48370 included in that? There are some excluded.
So that's looking at it for sale, and then when you look at it for rent, it's a little, it's different, and then you can look at it on a monthly basis, and then also on an annual basis. And so when you look at the average rent per these apartments by the type, whether it's studio or a 4-bedroom home or apartment, you'll see that per month, yours are a little lower than national. Now, does that ring true?
I believe it does. I believe we're lower than, well, I guess I'll be careful, because some of the newer product that we have produced recently, rent's pretty high.
And so
But,
that,
but overall, there's a lot of other facilities still here that were existing, have been here for quite a while on Pontiac Street, some of the other locations. And so you have to take all that into account, and I think when you balance it out, we're probably a little lower maybe than the national level. That's just me thinking, because I see it all the time.
One thing I want to highlight in this was the rent-to-income ratio, which is 44%. Now, according to the U.S. government and housing affordability, ideally, when you pay for your housing, it should be no more than 1/3 of your income. So this 44% says that for folks who are renting, on average, they're stretching.
I guess that's kind of like,
And that very much could be. And also, something that we've seen in the past 2 years when doing master plans is that actually, if you can afford to purchase a house, according to things like Zillow and the other apartment tracker and things like that, when you do the calculation, if you can afford to purchase a house, usually for the same area, your monthly mortgage is going to be less than if you're renting. And that is an inversion of what had been happening nationally up until probably, I would say, right before the pandemic, that we really didn't see that switch until then, in terms of rents being much higher than what mortgage payments were. And so what that's pushing for a lot of communities, recently we did completing a master plan in the city of Howell, is that they're having a lot of housing affordability problems. And specifically, it's their employers are bringing it to the city and saying that the housing affordability is a problem. Because they
the
can't,
rent's too high or the incomes of the renters is too low?
they cannot get consistent workers who can get to work and
Fulton
have,
County has the same.
and have childcare.
Fulton County has the same.
Mhm.
County.
So, the question then becomes, in Oxford Township, are you in the same situation? And then, what steps do you want to take, if any?
I think we're moving in that direction somewhat. I don't know that we're in that place at the moment, but with the inflationary conditions of what's going on with interest rates and mortgage, as high as maybe going to 8%, which we don't know yet, depending on what the Fed play with us on. And the high yield coming off the bonds right now at 5%, that hasn't happened since 2007. So you're looking at all those numbers, which I look at numbers all the time, but we have to. But I think we're going to slowly get to that point, maybe. We're not there right now in Oxford, but I think it could happen. You think we are? I think we're not there yet.
Well, and we're at the very beginning of the process, and you look at data, and, so this is the first question, is what's going on? We want to make sure that, as you are all rightly pointing out, when you conflate data, and when you pull it from different sources, they don't always look at the fine grained, and it may not always translate, and they may have gotten something wrong. So we shouldn't necessarily take every single one of these figures as gospel, and need to look at them critically. One of the things I wanted to point out here, in terms of percentages,
And
is
the slide that drove the question.
that, most of your housing stock is one family detached. So by this current estimate, that's 6,389 units. And then none of the rest of these, whether it's one family attached, all the way up to 50 units, none of those, and even when you add in the over 1,000 units in mobile homes, none of those even come close to that single family number. And so, and there is always there's an instinct to keep the status quo, especially with housing, because for many people who are homeowners, this is their largest investment ever. And so to look at changing what that product is a hard community conversation to go past where you've already planned and zoned. And so, but if you looked at this, and then you looked at some of the things where people are coming in, and granted, this does not. One of the things we can go and do is then, this does not take in all of the building permits that have come through the township probably in the past 2 years, and things that are in the field or being built or just got their certificate of occupancy. We can add those into the mix and have a little more critical look at it.
I believe it's in line with the road.
Yeah, it's on, in line through SEMCOG. You can,
For what you're showing, I think it's in line.
oh, you think it's in line, okay.
First,
So, anyway, you can, if you look at this, who your market is in coming in, and who you've got, doesn't necessarily, a single-family house is not necessarily gonna serve all of them. And it also, if you have folks who are aging, and a single-family home isn't going to be something that they can stay in, the question is whether you have more stuff built, or whether you rely on them moving someplace else, and your strong housing market, to bring other families into those homes, or other households into those homes.
So are you saying that we need, if we could magically adjust our housing, then we would have more people coming in?
I think if you adjusted your housing and you had more probably single-family attached, and more low-scale, like mid-rise, low-rise to mid-rise multiple family, especially with what we've been seeing for site plan reviews, you would get a lot more housing units.
I don't disagree with that, because in order to do some of those projects, they have to change our master plan.
Yes,
But we also have pieces of property that are multifamily zone that have been sitting as a vacant lot for years and years and years and years, and not, you would think that those would be built up.
and a lot, I would say that the market now is much different than it has been since the 2000s. In that multiple, in the early 2000s, up until the housing crisis, the main thing that was financed was single-family residential. Then you had the housing crisis and things got really, really, really tight in terms of financing. It was starting to come back, and then you had a lot of single-family came back, and then just based on what we've seen working in dozens of communities, majority of what we see is multifamily. And so when we talk to developers, that's what's getting financed. How long that's gonna last, I don't know. Does that, another thing with all the natural features that you have here, does that fit? I mean, you've had residents come to you and talk about a proposal that is zoned multiple family. That piece of property is zoned multiple family, it's planned for multiple family. And so, and there's a reason that you had that at that time. But the natural features in looking at them, that may be different. And so one of your challenges will be, what are your guiding principles, and then how does that affect a future land use map?
quick question, just for clarification.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm reading it correctly. We had what's the definition of one detached and one attached, and then two units? Not
So-
bedrooms, it's actually one.
It's units, so it's a dwelling unit. So
Dwelling.
So one dwelling unit detaches your traditional single-family house. I live in a single-family house.
Got it.
Attached is one unit that's attached together like townhouses or row houses. And that might be 4 of them attached, it might be
Okay,
5 of them attached. 2 units is a duplex.
got it.
And then 3 or more, when you start going there, that's not attached, that's the number of units that you go in through a shared access, and that's the number of units that are,
All right, that's all I understand.
okay.
You broke it down pretty good by definition of code.
Thank you.
Those are all by code.
So, all right, I'm gonna, any more questions on housing or households? Before I turn it over to Mateo.
I'll wait to ask that later,
Okay.
if it's not really clarification.
I have a question for your closing comments. How is this gonna play into our master plan? There's a lot of data here. Some of it we all agree with, possibly, some of it I'm not sure about. how does this fold into our master plan? Is
So,
that a fair question?
yeah, that's it. So how this folds into the master plan, including the data that Mateo is gonna present, is looking at what is going on in the what is going on in the township now. So this is your baseline that you're working from. And so we should only include data in the master plan that you feel is baseline data that is valid. There are some things in here where, and some of this, like the projections, we'll have to decide which one we want to take, because the projections from SEMCOG are different than the projections in here, and things like that. And but that's where how you use the data. And then the data, what it should do is shape where you're going in decisions. Because our next decision is, your next decision is, so we talk about the what, and then it's, so what? So what do you want to do? So you could look at this data and say, yes, if we want to have a one-to-one match with who the people are coming in and what the housing is, we need to change something so that the housing, so that those two meet. But it's also a valid thing to say, there is this mismatch, but due to other factors like preservation of natural features, preservation of farmland, things like that, we don't feel like this is where this needs to be. And maybe looking at an adjacent community, we see that they're gonna look to fill that housing need there. Like, Independence Township has a lot of senior housing that's been built. So that's within the region. You could say, okay, those folks, there's gonna be product and folks for people who are aging out of their homes to go there, who are still nearby the community. But you're gonna have to make some of those decisions.
Thank you.
Okay.
First slides don't really match what our handout was done.
Yeah, no, I looked at this.
Yeah, I was taking snippets.
He's trying to search around the places. You still have a question?
No.
Okay.
Okay. And I have after Mateo's done, I have the packet up, and so we could go to different pages and look at them together. That would be helpful.
Good evening, Mateo Paslapa, Carlisle Wortman Associates. I work with Megan as the planning consultant firm for the township. Excuse me. So Megan kind of looked at some demographic and some housing information. Some of the stuff I'm going to go over is more commerce and commercial related. So on this slide, what we wanted to take a look at was this is the percentage of jobs in your community. So the two big ones that kind of jumped out to us was we've got 22% manufacturing and almost 43% in services. So this isn't where necessarily the residents are working, it's the jobs in the township. They might be filled by residents, they might be filled from people commuting here to take those positions, but it just gives you an idea of where are the big employers in the township. And given the services can range, I would think, from an income perspective, you've got some folks coming from outside in to fill these positions. So this slide looks at where are your residents spending their money. And it's pretty interesting to look at, and it does kind of, again, help to paint the picture because one of the things that we've heard through various meetings and formats is retail, is we want more retail. And so where are people spending their money? There's a little bit of information further down the road that kind of dives into that deeper. But some of the more interesting statistics here that we found were when we look at apparel, education, entertainment, as far as where people are spending their folks, the percentages as a total, the 2.5, the 2.1, the 6, those numbers themselves aren't necessarily high in today's terms, but if you look at the projected change they're supposed to take over the next 5 years, they are looking to increase significantly in these fields. Education is likely a cost of education going up, but when you look at apparel and entertainment, it looks as though there is some real potential there for growth in that field as far as where residents are spending their money. The next one that I found, or that we found to be kind of telling, is when we look at food. So if you look at food, you can see yellow is 11.6%. That's the percent of the total discretionary income, or not discretionary, but income that people are spending. The two numbers below it, the 66 and the 33, those are, so 66% of the 11% and 33% of the 11%. I think what we think is telling there is the food away from home. I mean, one night in every 3 people are eating out. And I think that that kind of helps to inform some of the retail information that we have further in the slides. And again, mimicking some of the conversation about access to restaurants and food and things of that nature. Another number that stood out was the healthcare. Again, percent of what people are spending now, at 8.7, you know, that's relatively normal if you look at it compared to the index of 106. Again, the same numbers kind of apply here. 100 is your national average. So above, you're above, below, you're below. But that's looking to go up by almost 50% in the next 5 years. Again, more or less a factor of the rising cost of that segment, and probably telling based on the aging that the population is to take here and everywhere else. We look at housing, so that number as a percentage of total is actually decent. That's that 30, there's that 30%. The 30% of what they have they're spending on housing. That's projected to go up by another 27% in 5 years. So again, that's the housing is going to take a chunk of, you know, that income as time goes on. It's expected to, but it's a number that's kind of worth pointing out. The yellow lines below that, again,
Not to stop you in track, but the 86 is below the norm. The norm is 100.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So nothing, I mean, not alarming, but under the national average. And again, so I wanted to kind of break down what is making up that 29.7%. So those green numbers below it kind of highlight of that 29%, what are the sub-segments in housing that folks are spending their money. You know, 53% is shelter. That's your mortgage. Transportation, again, 20% of the total. Cars are expensive. It's going to go up 16%. You know, those are all expensive. So this is all just kind of a consideration of where are people spending their money right now? Where are they projected to be spending it in 5 years?
Just one quick, above 100 is good, below 100 is bad?
I had a beholder.
Not bad.
Yeah, I had a beholder. You know, above the national average, you're spending more than other folks are spending throughout the country. Under, you're spending less. So, yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yep,
Not
you did.
copping out on I had a beholder. So here, what retail markets are underserved in Oxford. So part of what came for this is, or came with the report, is a called an economic leakage, excuse me, report. And so this is not the report in its exhaustive nature, but what I wanted to do was kind of start pulling some of the bigger numbers. And so red is basically an indicator of that's how many dollars are leaving the township over a year to fulfill these needs in other communities that have these types of retail. So you have building material and garden equipment and supply dealers, that's $20 million a year that's leaving the township. Food service and drinking places are,
Just help me out. Leaving the township, they're going outside the township to purchase and coming back in.
correct,
Thank you.
correct. This is where your residents are spending their money, and if it's red, it means it's not here. So food service and drinking places, again, restaurants, that's almost 17 million. Furniture and home furnishing stores is $8 million a year. General merchandise, apparel, accessories, furniture, other sales, it's a very large category. That's $86 million a year. Healthcare, pharmacies, almost 19 million. And so at the end of the day, at the very bottom, you've got about $470 million a year leaving the community to fulfill whatever retail or service needs they have outside of the community. Did you have a question, Michael?
I do, but I guess my question, but it's not for clarification. Is 464 good or bad? I don't know. What are other people? It looks like a bad number.
I mean, I would.
How does it compare to like some of the similar sized communities? Because I use motor vehicle and parts. okay, yeah, we don't have a dealership.
No, you're right,
So
hundred
we're
percent.
not spending, I mean,
How would
most of
be
that number.
compared to like a Lake Orion that has a Home Depot and
Yeah.
Vans and AutoZone and
Well, and I mean, if you time it out, I mean, Auburn Hill, or, Great Lakes Crossing is 25 minutes away, right? So that's a huge draw, and all those dollars are gonna be counted in this. So this isn't necessarily to imply that you could build out a retail or service infrastructure that could capture every one of these dollars.
No, you can't.
You couldn't.
I agree, that's kind of why I asked the question.
Yeah, I mean, I would say comparatively, I'd rely on Megan.
I wrote 10 down earlier when I was looking at all this analysis before tonight.
Yeah,
And most of them are all in commerce. And one of my big ones that I said to Megan earlier was food stores. We got one store here.
sure.
You got 3 Krogers in Orion. I mean, there's things that we could do here to make it better for people to stay here and shop. So commerce is a big part of what I think we need to look at as part of this plan that we're talking about for our,
Agreed.
you know, and I looked at building materials, eating and drinking places, automobile repair, technical business. We don't have that here. We don't have tech business. So we got a lot of stuff that we need to look at. Those are great numbers to me, because we could keep some of that here and capture it.
But I agree, that's kind of why I asked, how does it compare?
Sure.
You're saying $470 million
Yeah.
migrates out of our 20,000 people?
460.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, but if Kroger, I mean, Kroger has 3 stores in Orion. Well, if I'm Kroger, I'm looking, why do I need to build a store in Oxford? They're
No,
coming
no.
to me anyway, so they're not,
Right,
why
no,
would they
100%.
spend money? Because they're just gonna cut
You
their
can't-
sales in Orion and beef them up here in Oxford.
So,
These are discussions we need to
But-
have.
okay.
That's a
I
different
think-
discussion.
But I'm just saying,
No.
these retailers are in other communities.
Yeah,
Let's-
right, let's,
yeah.
don't interpret this information as bad.
That's why.
Oh, I'm not
Yes.
saying it's
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, and you'll never get them, every single one to black, you might not even get them to break even. It's just painting a picture of, again, gaps that exist in the retail that might continue to
Right.
exist. But there also might be ones that we can improve upon, you know, based on the information that we're seeing.
Yeah, right, and I would say, so rather than look at this as good and bad, look at everything we'll read as an opportunity. And you're looking at a choice as to whether you want to take that opportunity. And I think, Mr. Heinrich, you're pointing out some very good things that are actually, Mateo has in his next slides, that will talk a little bit more about if you saw an opportunity. So we're just going to take food at home, so grocery stores.
Yeah.
If you're looking to attract those, there are some metrics that go into it, and some of the things that Mateo's going to talk about is that. So more the larger question, I think, for you as planning commissioners, is looking at this data, is there markets or areas that you want to target to attract certain land uses, knowing that you can plan in your master plan, you can put it in your zoning, but for certain types of retail, you may have to do more than just that. And some of it might be an infrastructure issue.
Or it might be a healthcare issue, or it might be anything. It could be all
So,
those different.
so let's let Mateo
Yeah.
give you a bit more information, and then we
Doing
can
a
have the
great
lively
job. He's
discussion.
No, no,
got
you guys
numbers
That's why I didn't really want to ask.
He just started freaking
No, no.
people out, that's what he did.
Yeah. All right. So, part of the study included a void analysis, and so what that looks at is specific chains throughout the nation, and kind of ranks them against your local criteria and your local economy, and tries to align them with which ones are the most likely to succeed in the community, and which ones, you know, maybe not so much. So what we did here, it's 6 pages long, the void analysis itself, but what I tried to show is kind of your top tier folks and your lower tier folks, to give you an idea of what might work and what wouldn't. The relative fit score is like your grade on an exam. 100% is great, and the closer you get to 0, the worse you did. And they look at other factors, they look at cannibalization rates, minimum square footage needs, all that stuff. What we thought was kind of more pertinent is what's the drive time to the nearest location, where is the nearest location, and again, what the fit score is. So, excuse me. So I won't read through these, you know, one by one, but what we did note is that there's 6 restaurants in this list. There's 4 clothing stores in this list. There's 2 hardware stores or home, you know, excuse me, your Home Depots, your True Values or Aces. there's 2 furniture stores, there's 2 department stores, and there's 2 sporting goods stores. And a lot of that, the 2 might not sound like a lot, but those are typically big box retailers. So I mean, those are larger institutions that very well could fit in the community. I cannot help myself. I hope you guys like jerky. Because the beef jerky outlet is number 2.
I was gonna say, we need to tune in to number 2 there.
Most of those in a municipality that's on an expressway.
We
don't
can
have
be
an
an
expressway that runs through
exception.
Oxford.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree necessarily, but M24 does generate enough traffic count to get the attention of these types of retailers. So these are the ones that kind of make it.
So, which drives my numbers, so a lot of this is, just going back to how it's calculated, like how the numbers to get there. Is it based on traffic volume? I know that's in the package. So it's based on more traffic volume that goes through the community?
My understanding.
24 versus population, because I mean, 20,000 people play sports at this thing. I know it was bigger than that, but they'll measure it outside of the community, which is in there too. 5 mile, 10 mile, 20 mile radius, it's just, what do they use, or is it both? It is official.
I mean, I think it's several factors. I think it's, it's a radius out. I think it is, so again, the cannibalization rate is not on here, but it is in the report. I think part of it is a lot of these franchises have a certain geography that they will not put their stores within, so depending on what that is, they can kind of figure out, you can support 2 McDonald's, or you can't. And so if you could, they'd be here. If they can't, then they're not. So I think there's other factors like that that go into selecting which one of these works, how far are people willing to get those things? For something that's really boutique specialty,
Beef jerky?
like beef jerky, well, yeah, like beef jerky. They may or they may exclude them or include them from the list. So again, this is 6 pages long, but one of the things that I wanted to show, I was going to show the bottom tier, but I burned through 11 spaces on just this 3% alone. But this is kind of a listing of some of the stores that scored kind of in the lower quarter. And again, just to give you an idea, there are some stores here that fall into the clothing store category. But these stores, we would argue are a little bit more geared towards potentially a teenage demographic, and again, based on maybe the age and the projected age of the community, that maybe is why they scored lower than being at the top as opposed to like a general clother. But yeah, so it's very fascinating stuff, and again, for us, it was really important because we are hearing the retail conversation, the service conversation from the team here, from the community, from what we do, in our daily jobs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we wanted to provide this because I think it'll help you guys inform. I mean, think about, one of the pieces of information that we can provide as we dive deeper into this is maybe that square footage conversation becomes more important as we start to look at, well, what size do we expect our commercial lots to be? Where can we put them? Again, a lot of these stores are going to hone in on the M24 corridor.
Because we go back to the previous slide, one of the questions, what square footage will any of those require?
And that way we can provide that. Like I said, I tried to pick and choose what I was going to throw out. That's the end of the 360 report and void analysis. And any other questions before I give it back to Megan?
10,000 questions.
Great. Megan, have at it.
Thanks, Mateo. So I'm going to take this down, and then I will bring up the 360 report. And our question for you on that was, what were your impressions and your advice on how to utilize this data? And I'm going to take ownership for something right now in that, we thought about giving you the void analysis, the 6-page spreadsheet, and I said I didn't want to confuse you that much out of the gate. If you were interested in that, okay, Mr. Spitz, Mr. Bailey, well, I will just give it to Cheryl, and she can forward it to all of you, and then use it as you will. But I didn't want to get so bogged down in that, because there's a lot of detail there. I wanted to get this high level first and then go in. I'm going to go this way down, starting with Mr. Ballard, and this way, and just ask for impressions, advice, questions that you have about the data.
I don't write this memo.
Okay.
Because I needed a little more understanding about some of the background behind the data, how is it collected, and some meaning behind it before I can get questions, so, so I don't have any answers at the present time.
Okay. And Mateo and I are always available by email. And then also we'll return to this item at the next meeting as well. Okay. Mr. Hunwick?
Yeah, reviewing the data from my perspective, I guess maybe I would look forward to some bullet point information in general regarding everything. I mean, it was a lot of data to look at. And some of it I just thought was kind of convoluted. I just thought, I'm being overwhelmed here with data. This is small town Oxford and we're looking at all this information. But I get it, and I would like to have maybe get with, if it's you or Mateo, putting it into a broader context so it's lumped, a lot of this information is lumped together so we can generalize over, what this information is trying to tell us.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Am I?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, yep.
You want to say
A valid point, yes. No, and that'll need to be done in the master plan anyway. So, thank you, Mr. Knoll?
I'd like to use these household expenses for my college tuition. I like this report, it sheds a lot of light on things, but I don't, in the things that I know of true life, and the pulse of Oxford, I think we need to use this as one of the tools to do our evaluations from, because, and I'm not harping, but books, supplies, and for college is $13. 5-year projection is going to go up to $16. College tuition starts at $9.85, and 5-year projection is $12.75. It's all laced through here. It's just not one. I like this one the best because I have tuition to pay next month. I'd like to pay $12.75.
I'll second that.
But I think we need to not lose sight of the validity of this, not lose sight of the intent, and use it to help us out. Because we got some natural obstacles in our township that is going to prevent some of our good faith intent. Small things like water and sewer. We have a corridor on 24 that is getting pretty packed tight. We have a corridor that has lakes that butt up to it, and it's going to hinder development because of some of the natural things in our community. So I think we need to use this as a tool and move forward, and understand it is a tool.
Thank you, Mr. Knoll. Mr. Stiz?
Yeah, I would second what Mr. Knoll said on a lot of it. It's a guide. Don't take it all to heart, because I think there are flyers in there that were all questioning that don't necessarily make sense, at least from what we understand. But I think there's some very valid information in here. One thing I was trying to show Mr. Berger, go back to the housing values and the change in 5 years. There's only 2 that are positive. It's anything over $400,000. And which is one of the reasons we questioned the 18-year-olds moving into this. And that's a pretty hefty lift for somebody that age to try to buy a house in Florida, right? Like a first-time home buyer, in most cases, right? So, but it also drives, should we be considering other things from a home housing perspective to bring some of those numbers down? Because countywide, there's an affordability issue in Oakland County. This is not just an Oxford discussion. I have it at the county also. Because they just created a housing trust program because of issues like this. But not all communities understand that, because it is the biggest purchase most of us make, and you want your home value to go up, which based on this report, it's going to go up at a pretty good rate, right? So, which is why I asked my inflation question, how are these numbers calculated? Right? Is this year's numbers, right, from a cash value standpoint?
I don't think it's just this year's numbers.
No, I don't think so. I'm hoping to use it.
I mean,
I'm
'cause
hoping.
the numbers don't match up for that, just in that particular way.
We'll ask that question, I'll get you an answer.
Okay, thank you. And then, the list that Mateo put up, I think it's a great list, a lot of good information there, which is why I wanted to see it. But I also battle with, there's a lot of development, not even development, a lot of older structures on M24 that have been vacant for years. So why is that? Why can't we get some of these
And
people on that list to come here in those locations? Is it not big enough?
It
Right?
might-
Does it
it-
not meet their needs? What
Yeah.
is different, and what does Oxford Township need to think of differently? Because to me, the master plan is one thing, but from the township board, there might be things that they need to think about on how they're gonna structure
And to build on that,
some opportunities for some of these businesses to come in, because some of them want to come in, but without a little enticement they're not gonna do, just be sure.
and to build on that, we have $470 million going out the door. Why isn't
Yeah.
the supply and demand and profit driving some of this?
So, I'm gonna try to answer two of your questions, if that's
Sure.
okay?
I was concerned with that.
Oh,
That's
right.
not
Well,
common.
maybe just some context or food for thought. For the retail, it's not unusual for a community your size to have that amount of leakage because retail follows rooftops. So, in retail is sticky. So you have a big housing explosion, you have a lot more people move in. That happens gradually over 5 to 10 years. The retailers, it doesn't match what their data needs are, what they say that they think that they need to be profitable until you reach a certain level, and then it pings. So, just like maybe you're looking to have a flight and you ping things on Expedia or whatnot, and you're not gonna purchase that ticket until it gets to a certain level, they're not gonna even look at something in your community until they determine that there's a certain amount of retail dollars that they can capture. And that cannibalization and that other location go into it. So part of your challenge also, in some ways, in attracting certain retailers is that you are right next door to Orion. And there's a lot of regional draw retail right there. And to them, that might wipe some things off their map. The other thing is on M24, you've got some odd-shaped lots, some of them are very small. Then you don't have water and you don't have sewer. It is an extra expense to them. To a lot of financiers, sinking a well doesn't make sense. They'd rather pay tap fees. And the other thing is, if you have to have if you have to have a septic, then you're a lot of times increasing the amount of property that you have to have by a third or you're doubling the size. And especially for anything like a restaurant where you have grease, that septic field has to be engineered in a very specific way. Otherwise, it's going to go sideways and you're going to have a big problem. So those might be some of the reasons that you have things that have sat or things that haven't been attractive. And those are things, though, that you can say that you can fix. Also, you do not have a staff person or a revenue stream for economic development. It's whatever comes out of your general fund. And M24, you have the ability to do a corridor improvement agency. Mateo's done now in a short time with us, two. So, and it tips captures, and then you can invest in improvements, you can bond against it, you can hire somebody to be like, I think, do you have a DDA manager in the village?
They do.
Yes.
Yes, so somebody like that, but instead for corridor, the only thing on the corridor is that you have to have multiple families allowed in there somewhere, planned in zone. So those are things, those are tools that you could set up in the master plan or circumstances that you realize. But just, if things have sat there and they haven't changed, you can update your master plan, but if you don't take other actions, it's still gonna sit there.
Which is why I know there's some obstacles.
Yeah.
Historically, there's some obstacles. Which, your comments lead into what my next point was going to be, which really goes back to step one. For me. Is more of a charter, or what does Oxford Township want to be? Right? What do you envision this community being? Do you envision you want to be a Rochester Hills? Do you want to be a Lake Orion? Do you want to be an Elm Hills? Do you want to be something completely different? To me, that's what we need to understand, because looking at that list that Mateo showed, my engineer comes out, okay, how do I fix all this? But should I fix all of it? There might not be what this community really wants. They might like what we have today, and I do hear that a lot. But there are some pieces they want to improve, but do they wanna go overall and just change everything and start over? You know, just start building stuff and putting all this stuff in? I don't think that's the case, but that's where we need to come to step it on. What do we want to be as a township? That's where it all starts to me, and then you can start piecing these pieces in.
Mr. Berger?
Well, first of all, I mean, I want to thank you for putting this information together because it was an eye-opener to me. And I think it's opened a lot of eyes for us up here as a group too. And one of the things that I first read, and when you talked about the phragmites and the protection of wetlands and preservation and stuff, I've always felt like we want to try and have preservation of certain properties. And when I talked about conservatories and stuff for that reason, and the benefits that some developers can get from that also, I talked to another individual today about that at lunchtime with someone. So I think our waterways are very important here. I think we have a lot of lakes that have been created from mining gravel out of the ground, and they're pristine waterways. I think those are some things we should not overlook yet. That's got to be part of the master plan, how we work around those as part of the thing. And the big thing is, when I went into the commerce part of it, the biggest thing the number one thing I wrote was mining, that we have many acres to take back in the future. So all those properties that we're going to try to reclaim in those mining areas are going to become very important as to what we look at, what we want to do with those. So I think, you know, when I first moved here, my wife said, where are we supposed to shop? That's what she said to me. She's still going to Rochester all the time. I said, we don't have to drive to Rochester. Well, that's what she felt like. So, I mean, I looked at building construction, and then I looked at food stores, and building materials, eating and drinking places, automobile repairs and services. We don't have a lot of that stuff here. We got to drive to another community for all that. Tech business, we don't have it. Recreational enterprise, we don't have, we're starting to get more. You know, that's starting to come on, which I think is important, because I see people all the time walking all these safety paths and doing the different things around the community. I want to protect part of that. I want to keep that in mind of what we want to see here. And the medical services, we're finally getting a little bit our way. But just recently, like a couple weeks back, I had to take my wife someplace, and we had to go to Beaumont, another community, for urgent care. We don't have that stuff out here. So these are all important things that as we bring people on board, which we're going to do, it's going to happen, we have to get these other services in line. Now where we put them, that's what we got to work out. And I think the 24 corridor is what it is. I don't care, you can't stop. You got 66,000 vehicles going up and down it daily. It's there. We got to take part of it and utilize it. So industrial-wise, commercial-wise, and the activities. When Aragona first came to us with that property that's all behind Tim Hortons there, we had a beautiful picture of what we were going to put there. Well, it never came to fruition. It just didn't happen. The economy, you know, this and 08 went and that and all that, and so things disappeared. But I think we got a good chance to really put something together. Current house prices, when I wrote that down, $429,450. Now he's right. My grandson can't pay that kind of money to live in a house. I'll guarantee you. So, and house appreciation in the past 5 years said 45%. Now that could be there because the houses have gone stupid crazy with what's going on out there because everybody's bidding against each other to get a house. We don't have enough of them. If we could build them, we could sell them. We can't build them fast enough. So we have so much to think about in the next few months. And hopefully we get this data back to us from the steering committee too, that'll start rolling back in.
For the community engagement, yes.
So we can get that community
Yes.
engagement part of it going. It's gonna be very important to look at and try and actually read it. That's my first goal. Because sometimes I don't always get my homework done in time. I tried to today. But there was a lot to look at today. But thank you very much for your time and effort to put that all together. That was a lot for you guys. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Berger. Mr. Bailey?
How do you follow that? I think, you know, kind of being a numbers person, one of the things I like to look at is benchmarks. My first thought, when I saw that slide that said 460 million leaving this, is that better or worse than we were 5 years ago? You know, are more people leaving to buy home improvements or other things, or is that something we may have improved on? That, you know, that kind of data doesn't show that. That's some information I would like to see as some comparisons. And like, you know, everybody said, you know, do we want to be the next Rochester or the next Lake Orion? Well, how do we compare? And that's where I think the community involvement, those committees are going to be nice, because, and I really think they need to be very active, because you look at that list of all the retail, well, those are all chains, those are all nationwide places. But all you see on community forums and things like that is, oh, stay away from that, shop local. The local ones don't survive. So how do we bring in something that is going to survive here and shop here? Because we do have a lot of vacant buildings. So before we go building more, how do we entice people to occupy the ones that are here and see how they survive?
Okay. Thanks. Mr. Turner?
Looking at your email that you put out and items that you recommend change, one of those was to remove the public input section from the goals, objectives, and strategies. It's the second one from the bottom.
Yeah, and I would put that somewhere else in its own
Yeah.
section, somewhere else in the plan.
Yes, it needs to be in the plan, and it needs to be prominent enough where anybody who picks up a master plan can see why that item was in there. Oh, it came in from the committee. Some of the people, and that's what we're doing this for, is for our community, not for us, has requested that type of thing. You know, Jim Fifield that's on your committee might come in and say, I want 50 miles of horse riding paths. Well, you understand that when you know where Jim lives, you know what he's part of, and things, and where that was driven from. But we need to make sure that the public is behind this and will help make it happen.
Okay.
I think you've supplied us with plenty of data to start, realizing that data is as good as the day you get it,
Yep.
one way or the other, so.
Okay. So, Mr. Turner, anything else on the data before I use your wonderful segue into the other subject that was?
No.
Okay. So Mr. Turner talked about, in our memo, how we talked about recommendations for restructuring the master plan. And essentially it was that, first of all, your first 45 pages are growth data, definitions, things like that. To quote our president, Ben Carlisle, we feel like you're burying the lead. Like, all the good stuff is after page 50. So what we were suggesting is to have an executive summary in the introduction chapter, add a roadmap, like 3 sentences of this chapter does this, this chapter does that. Boil down that background studies chapter to no more than 2 or 3 pages per subject, and then keep the data but put a lot of it in the appendix. And then, as Mr. Turner said, remove that public input section from the goals, objectives, and strategies, have that to be its own. And then there's a lot of strategies listed in the goals, objectives. If you read that again, that's another heavy read, because there's compelling goals and objectives, and then there's a lot of detail. We would almost suggest taking that detailed strategies and put them in different chapters which deal with those high-level things. And maybe they're open space, transportation, or utilities, or maybe those are other things that emerge during this process. And that was really our recommendations for the format. And wanted to hear from you, yes, no, your impressions. Yeah. Mr. Henwick. So Mr. Spitz, I see a yay. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to comment was, going through the first 45 pages, there are a lot of tables in there. And the tables, to me, are self-explanatory, based on the headings, but above them, there's 2 or 3 paragraphs explaining what the tables are. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, why have all these paragraphs explaining the tables? Just put the tables in front of me, because the tables are self-explanatory. At least that's my opinion. I mean, you could probably condense a significant amount of pages by eliminating that information.
That's a good point. All right. Anything else on that format? Because at this point, I'm going to take silence as an agreement as a facilitator.
Well, give us a recap on that.
Perfect.
Give us a recap right now of what you agreed, or
Yeah, what you're asking us to agree to. but-
I'm asking you to agree on the format that I listed, the page 1 of that memo.
I agree.
All right, and then with some information recommended for removal or expansion on page 23, you have a section that says invasive species, but it really only speaks about Phragmites. We say either take that section out or really expand it about what invasive species that you have, especially with the lakes that you have. There's some management that needs to happen, which we would think would be important to include, but don't want to go, off on a road that you all feel that isn't worth our time.
Maybe my comment to that is, get into the lakes is a great one. There's a lot of lakes here, which a couple people brought up. Do we know all the invasive species in every lake that we can actually do that service, or is it gonna create so much more work? Do we wanna actually go down that path? That's what I'd be worried. I know we have a couple lakes that do treatments today, but I don't believe every lake in Oxford Township does. Or if there's a couple of homes on it, they might do something special, and they probably have no idea other than whoever they're paying to do the service.
We have a very good landscape architect on staff, and I could just ask him what his recommendations are on this and bring it back to the
I
next
think
meeting.
it's a great point, and I'd love to do it, but I don't know if it just will overburden the project.
My note earlier is, before this evening was, I said first, because of the protection of the many waterways that we have with Paint Creek and the Clinton River and all that, I said, I believe we should provide a plan that would be a little more exhaustive of the threats of the surrounding invasive species, because I don't know what they all are. Like you said, you got an expert that could probably put some of that forward to us, but I just feel like we have so many around us, but I think we should help provide something to give us better protection.
Yeah.
Tom, so your point being that as kind of a separate study, like something exhaustive,
Yeah,
but not the master plan itself.
right.
I mean, it may be
But I
referenced.
believe we need to have something though.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure I was understanding. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, just thinking.
Mr. Knowles?
The board last night just approved many SADs that are in regards to weed control on the lakes.
Oh, okay.
So, I hate to use the term self-govern, but if a group of people on a lake get together and they meet the requirements of an SAD, then they will put a treatment plan in place to treat it accordingly. I can't speak for every lake, but a large number of lakes right out from this township are that way. The Phragmites, the county came out, didn't they not, and do some spraying through the township?
Along the roads.
If I may, on that one.
So, Mr. Chairman, they sprayed along the roads.
The road commission sprays along the road, but the county through the new park millage has a team that comes out and will help fight Phragmites across the county. And they'll spray for it and eliminate it.
Okay.
It's a long-term strategy from a.
And
from a
I
county
don't
perspective.
know where the moss, thank you, I can't call them the gypsy moss, but I don't know the technical term. Are those called invasive?
Oh, the ones that are attacking the boxwood?
No, they're attacking the oak.
I don't know if those are considered invasive species. I think they're natural, they're peril, but they're natural. So I don't know if they're considered truly invasive.
My comment would be is just, can we lump that all together and do a very cost-efficient study to see if we want to get involved with it or not?
Yeah, and then I think it's worthwhile also highlighting these things that you said that are already things that are in place to help, like the SADs, and, because that's a policy that could be in the master plan in terms of,
Good point.
and then,
You brought up to let people know that that avenue is out. They resurface roads with the SADs, they put light fixturing with SADs, they control the lakes with SADs, and,
and then also partnerships with Oakland County.
Yeah.
Because the planning does a great job of helping to preserve, helping municipalities to preserve open space. And also, I was not aware through Parks and Rec that you were using the knowledge that way.
SIGMA, I think is the acronym.
Okay. So, all right, so we'll include that. We'll flesh this out a little bit more, and also what we'll bring to you the next time is a basic outline of what the overall document might look like. And we can just have that as a working outline as we move forward.
That's a big document.
You know, it can be a big document, but it also, if it's, to Mr. Hunwick's point, if you use tables and graphics, and you kind of put what's most important first, it can read a lot, it can go a lot quicker, even though it is, you know, it might be an 80-page document.
Well, with me, I lump some of them together.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I thought that you could do it that way too, a little bit, to try and make some of that work a little easier for myself. And we'll see what happens when we get to the next one, and we'll go from there.
Well,
When do we do this again?
in 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks, you have a regular meeting in 2 weeks. And then, at that point in time, what we will do is we will ask you to look at maps. So specifically, if you go to the current master plan now, if you want to do a little homework ahead, just for you to think about, you go to map number 9. On page 49 of the current master plan, it's vacant and transitional land.
What page?
So, 49.
49.
You'll see that's a long map with about 50-some parcels highlighted. Some of those have changed since the last time you updated this map, but those are, what we'd like to do is have it be more as a work session, get you out from behind that dais, gather around and really just mark up that map in terms of where changes are happening, what you see happening, questions you have, more things that need to be explored. And then at that point, we'll probably have we're going to send a draft survey to the Community Engagement Steering Committee next week. So they have a beta test, and they can tell us everything that's wrong with it before it's trotted out to the community. And then hopefully get that out in mid-November, have that run to the end of the year, in January have results. And then they'll also, we met with them, and we'll have a draft community engagement plan for them at their next meeting, which is the second Tuesday of November. So you probably won't have communication back on that community engagement plan until your meeting in December.
Are you gonna get involved with what changes should be made to the format of the 2019 master plan as part of this update?
What we'll do is we'll make we've noted all these things that you've talked about, and we will submit to you in your next packet a draft outline that will look at the change, that will hopefully reflect the changes that you've talked about.
So yes to the question.
I'll talk to you after.
Okay. Right. Anything else in the master plan that you'd want to share?
I'm gonna go back to the question about the moss, because they are basically scheduled, but it's great to look at internet to look really quick. The question I would have, if we get into the moss, because it's destroys trees, do we get into other aspects of the ash borer and things that have been out there that are
I think that's a
species
separate
that
issue.
that
I mean,
take over
that's-
tree lines, you know, because we can get into many different levels of trees and everything else. Because we're talking lakes, now you're gonna talk trees. That's why I think you can be cautious on which path we go down.
Waterways, I want, but not just like, but, yeah, I think the trees, that's another subject matter. So let's be careful what we get into here.
Couldn't it be, Megan needs to look with objectives, it can be something where, like, in your goals, strategies, objectives section, you can make reference to pursuing a more exhaustive study in
Yeah.
the near future
Yeah.
that looks at the water invasive,
Yeah,
the
that
tree
sounds, that
invasive.
makes more sense.
That way the master plan references it without going into the weeds, no pun intended. And then the, sorry, Mike, that was,
No, you're good.
Yeah, and then-
Another animal.
it gives you an, you know, an angle for taking a bigger look at it.
And then it helps with the planning commission's work plan, and it helps the township board appropriately budget.
I have a couple of questions real quick.
Sure.
In the master plan, it referenced things like a township road master plan dated 2004 on page 101.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to get into that? Is that?
No.
Okay.
I would not recommend that.
I have no
Thank you.
problem with that. Then page 128 talks about zoning adjustments, multifamily. It's recommendations made by Carlisle Workman that talks about the township should explore splitting the existing RM zoning districts. It made recommendations. Two questions. One, did we do any of that? And two, if we did, how can we apply it in today's world?
Usually, once we get that vision, goals, objectives done, we'll go into those implementation strategies and talk to you then about which ones were accomplished, which ones should stay, which ones should go. So we'll talk, my plan would be to talk about that later, probably in February and March.
Okay.
I think you did a wonderful job, thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you. You all were,
10%.
you all were very, very,
10%, yeah, for about 1/4 of the way, no, 10%, he said.
didn't have to wrench any conversation out of you.
Okay.
Thank you for being enthusiastic participants.
We have no new business this evening, and so do we have any communications or committee reports that people want to report? And do we have any?
The ORC did, Mr. Chair.
Do you want to, would you like to report on that, John?
You're the chair.
Well,
I-
We
Maybe
have,
you can
we
report on
have,
it, 'cause
we
she-
have not met in a while with the ORC, but we just had a recent meeting last
Correct.
week, and so we are back on track trying to get together with things to get done. And obviously, we looked a lot at, I guess I want to bring up that big word, signage. So we're still working in the signage ordinance direction, and we're trying to move it forward, and I'm sure that Megan has tried to do what she could to get that in the direction of getting it to the attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Once it gets to the attorney, then it comes back to us,
Yes.
and then we will make a recommendation at some point in time to get it on a meeting with the PC. And if the PC then looks at it all and does everything they can do to put their blessing on it, eventually we're gonna take it to the township board. We just don't know what month that's gonna be yet.
Hopefully, winter, spring next year.
Yeah, thank you, that's the best way to say it. That's our report really from ORC at this point. So seeing that we don't have any engineers here tonight, and we have everything that we need from the planner, I think. We don't need any more comments from you this evening, do we?
We do expect a PUD we had a pre-application meeting on a PUD last week. They said that they are planning to submit late October, early November, so that they could be on your December meeting.
Really?
Tullamore North, so Tullamore is a development currently on Drainer Road,
South of Drain.
south of Drainer, a piece of property north of there.
Well, it's actually east of Giddings and north of Drain, so Tullamore North.
Yeah,
So
that,
it's kind of, that's the easiest way to explain the property, that the location is going to.
thank you, Mr. Berger.
I drive by it all the time, I can't help it. Okay, that's it, we are out with everything, and we just now adjourned at finally 8:30.